first person I want to bring up is one of my closest friends who I've known for almost 30 years of my life, more than 30 years of my life now, who went through an experience that was very similar to mine, but she went through it in a unique way, and in a way that I think that we each individuate, but every one of us will identify almost immediately. So I'd like to welcome up Susan O'Connor.
Okay, so Mike knows I'm a nervous speaker. Hopefully I'll be able to keep it together. My knees are shaking. If my voice starts to shake, forgive me. I've also jotted down notes because it's difficult to focus when one is as nervous as I am right now. I'll give you the brief prequel to the story. I was a single mom, still am, and a small business owner. And I had two parents who were married, and my dad was ill. My mom took care of him. And my mom, the healthy one, died in her sleep in 2008, unexpectedly. I'm an only child. There's some extended family in the area, but you know how people have lives and they're busy. So I had to kind of step up and take on the role that my mother had been playing. And my dad had early-onset dementia as a result of encephalitis or something, as Mike said, or what we thought at the time. And he was a difficult person. He was reclusive. He lived in Little Compton, which, as most of you know, is pretty much the farthest point from anywhere else in the state of Rhode Island. And at first he was kind of self-sufficient. I would bring him meals that he could heat up for himself, and he did that okay. And meanwhile, I also had a 13-year-old daughter, which was a challenge in and of itself. But I had to shutter my business in order to spend the time taking care of him. He had a little bit of money, so I could pay for my gas and things like that and pay my rent. And I had a little bit of savings, but that was gone very quickly. He took a fall, and that threw our lives into a tailspin. He was in the hospital for about a month, and I had to be there every day. The hospital was in Fall River, Massachusetts. I was commuting from my home in Providence to my daughter's school, to my dad's house, and back to the school, and back to the home, and blah, 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 taking care of pets and my dad. And then when the hospital could no longer do anything for him, he was put into a rehab center. And they took care, it was great because they had him 24 hours a day. I was able to kind of have a life while they took care of him. And then when you're in a nursing rehab situation, you reach a point where they can do no more to improve you. And when you reach that point, you have two options. Either you go home, or you stay there and you start paying by the day, which at the time, so this is 2010, I want to say 2009, it was $650 a day to take care of my dad, which was a little less than a very nice suite at the West End would have cost. So I said, well, what do I do with this old man? I don't know. They said, well, he needs 24-hour care. He has to leave tomorrow. So I took my dad, and I took him home to his home in Little Compton because I thought if there was one thing I could give him as a daughter, who might not, he wasn't the greatest guy, he wasn't fun to be around, but I thought I could give him a little bit of dignity in his last years, and he wanted to be at home, he wanted to be in the country, he didn't want to be in the city, and he didn't want to be around people he didn't know. So, let me just take a peek. So every day I drove 180 miles to bring my daughter from Little Compton to Classical High School, and then I'd drive myself back. I would take care of Dad all day, drive to Classical to pick her up and drive back. I had to be in the home as many hours as possible. Just leaving to take my kid to school was like my guilty pleasure almost. That was the time I had to myself, that 45-mile drive back. And it's not good to have those feelings, to feel that doing my duty as a mother and my duty as a daughter actually filled me with guilt because I wasn't there in the house with him, and anything could happen. He could set the house on fire, he could wander off, which he did from time to time. He would also wander in the middle of the night. He would wake up. I was telling Ellie a story. 3 a.m. he woke me up one night getting dressed. And I had taken all of his shoes so that he couldn't wander out into the snow without alerting me. My daughter woke me up, said something's going on. I walked into his room and he was sitting on the edge of his bed straightening his tie. And I was like, where are you going? He said, to the dentist, I think I'm going to be late. And I asked him where the dentist office was and who the dentist was. And he said, it's in the Turk's Head building. And I don't know when there was a dentist's office in the Turk's Head building. I'm sure there was at some point, maybe in the early 50s, but he was certain he had to be there. And that was just the kind of stuff I had to deal with. And it was fine. Again, it was my duty as a daughter, but I didn't know who to talk to about such things. When I talked to his doctor, he would just kind of shrug and say, he's an old man, this is what you've got. The other interesting thing that happened in the middle of all of this, right after Christmas, I woke up with stomach pains, and it turns out that my appendix was rupturing. So I had to drive to Classical High School, pick up my daughter, drive myself to the Miriam Hospital, called some friends on the way saying, I think something's really wrong. Can you bring Katie, she was 14 by that point, can you bring her back to my dad's house? And she had to take a week out of school to take care of my dad at 14 so that I could have an appendectomy and get back home. And I was on narcotics, so I couldn't really do what I had to do for those few days. So like the level of upset, and she couldn't come today, as she put it, because she didn't want to. She doesn't want to hear this. She doesn't want to relive it. It's still, she's 22 now, it still has an impact on her just to think about it. There needs to be, it's not just money. A lot of it is money. We need to be able to take care of the elderly. We need to be able to take care of children. And we need to give our family members dignity as they're going through these health and sometimes neurological crises. But it's also, we need to know where the resources are. I found out about a lot of things after my dad died. Things that we could have had. Affordable daycare for the elderly. But when you're in it and you don't know who to talk to and there aren't social workers nearby, when you're at basically the end of the earth and the closest hospital is an hour drive and you're living every moment in that moment, unless you've got a friend who's a social worker, you don't know what the first step to take is. And I used to sit in my car and call 211, what can I do? And they just didn't have the answers for me. So the idea that there's not only a fund to help people stay on their feet or get back on their feet if they slip, the idea that there's a number to call to say, I just need somebody so I can take a shower and not worry that my parent is going to fall down a flight of stairs. I said in a Facebook post last night, I wouldn't wish what happened to me on my worst enemy, and I still wouldn't. No one should have to go through that. No one in this room who hasn't been through it should have to face that. We need to be better for our neighbors and for ourselves, for our worst enemies. No one should, I will never recover from what happened with my dad. I was self-employed. I have now become unemployable. I have a huge gap in my resume. The workforce has changed to the point where everything's online, and I feel like a really old lady saying that, and I'm not, but the fact that I have to submit a resume to a stranger online terrifies me. I've never done that. I come from a different time in the workplace. So it's just all these little things, and I know it sounds like complaints from up here, maybe not, but we should be able to keep people on a track when they have to take time out of their lives to be caregivers. We should have supplemental care for people who make the choice to take care of their family. And I think now I'm just rambling. I just want to look at my note again and see if there was anything. No, that's pretty much it. So thank you so much. I hope all of you are doing well and that your families are too, and we'll get better. This is good.